Many of you might agree with the Business Council that council should be more efficient and cut red tape, but a new council will have even more of a microscope on it after the ICAC's sacking. How do we balance the need for efficiency with the need for checking that we don't have another rogue planner on our hands? Chris Connor, could I go back to you? Because you have the idea of a lead planner to speed things through. How do we balance these two things?
I think the words that you mentioned before are the most important. We need transparency, we need openness with all of this. I'd just like to start with the people in this room representing some of the major businesses and organisations in this city. I think the first and foremost thing that a council needs to do is to make sure that you are getting the best service that you can get from our council and that your businesses are thriving. Because the greatest message anyone outside of this region will get will be from you as a business in the local area saying, our business is going well, there is not an impediment that's occurring in the development that we need to take place in this city. We've got a council that's in partnership with us, not in opposition to us when we want to put a development in and start growing our business and moving forward. So part of my proposal, as you mentioned before, was in major projects. Instead of not knowing where you're up to in your application, be it a DA or whatever the other application you might be putting forward, is that there's real transparency in the whole process. I'd love to see a situation where we have an online tracking system so that you as a developer or an applicant can track where your DA is up to. If it's a major DA situation, then you've got a lead planner, one person that has carriage of your application all the way through. A situation where along the whole line of the process, it's open. You know what's going to happen. There's a matrix set out. You know the criteria for that all the way through. And at the same time, all the way along, there are markers for communication by council to you. Not these great voids of time when you don't know, is something happened? Why is it being held up? Do I have to keep chasing them? No, I think it has to be a partnership between the business community and the council to make sure these developments move ahead quickly and for the best result to create the jobs, have a vibrant economy here in Wollongong. That's the thing that local businesses want, and that will attract other businesses to come here.
All right, Alice Carton, you were in the last council where we had a rogue element or two. How do we speed things through for the sake of business, but still keep an eye on the process?
The main thing that councils are responsible for are the planning instruments, so the local environment plans, the development control plans, and some part in the regional environment plan as well. What we need to do is ensure that those instruments are actually up to date. So we've got one that's fairly new, and the last one that we had put in place, we actually had a comment made by Gabrielle Kibble that it would be reviewed within the next 5 years, and I absolutely agree with that. I think it has to be kept current. The one we were dealing with when I was on council last was 20 years old, and that wasn't any good for anyone. So what I'd suggest is that we continue, that the local environment plan that we have is actually a living document, and it can be changed, that people can have a look at it, and we can get comment as a council from all members of the community about ways to make it relevant to all of us. I don't believe in spot rezonings, and this is one of the big bugbears that I had when I was on council last time. You get people trying to pick a winner, so they buy a piece of land, which is employment land, and then they buy it cheaply, and then they get it rezoned to make it housing land. And all that does is turns us into a bigger dormitory suburb of Sydney. So I don't believe in picking winners. I don't believe in spot rezonings. I believe that the land that we have that is usable for employment should be left alone unless there's a damn good reason to change it. And my area is in the northern suburbs, and we have suffered terribly because of this. It's getting to the stage up there where you can't find someone to fix your car if something goes wrong with it. And I don't want to see that happening to the rest of Wollongong. The other thing I think that we need to do as well is encourage people, if they're going to put in a large DA or a DA that's going to substantially affect the people in their community, to try and engage the community before that DA goes in. A lot of the grumblings that go on in the community about large DAs is that there are private deals being done behind closed doors that no one knows about, and then they're given a fait accompli. So I would encourage all business owners, if you are going to do something that's pretty big, get into the ears of the local community groups, have a word with them, see if there's some way that you can make that look better. There's actually something down in Ulladulla that has worked quite well, because I think it was Woolworths has actually engaged with the community, taken a few beatings around the head and decided to do something that the community likes the look of a bit better. Every time I go past there, it's further and further out of the ground. So there are positives to it. So I don't think we need to worry about the rogue elements too much now. I think that everyone's watching us like hawks. But certainly I know that the 12 people that are sitting around that table plus the Lord Mayor will be watching everything very, very carefully as well, because I know I didn't like getting sacked last time, and if I'm lucky to be elected this time, it certainly won't be happening again if I can have anything to do with it.
All right, Michael Organ.
Thanks, Nick. I think council has to get rid of a lot of the red tape, and basically it has to develop a customer service focus. And whether you're a developer with a $30 million development proposal or an individual member of the community with a problem in your local area, you should get a certain level of customer service from council, and I think that's not happening at the moment. There's a big void there. So the new council needs to go in there and say, we need to develop a customer service focus so that whether these planning instruments, the processes are very transparent, they're open, we're constantly communicating with people, whether it's the people involved in the complaint or the development proposal, and we're engaging with the community, with those proponents at all levels. And once people know about the processes, we can identify ways in which we can cut red tape, we can move forward in other areas and save other areas. I think that's one of the ways we need to move forward in making council more efficient. Alice raised the issue of development lands, and when I was reading the opportunity for a new era document, I thought there's a lot in here that I agree with, and one of the issues was about diminishing employment lands. So I was thinking we should put to the business community, where were you when we were out there fighting on the barricades at places like Sandon Point, at the brickworks at Woonona, at Bulli Brickworks, saying to council, saying to the Department of Planning, don't rezone this as residential estates, maintain it as industrial employment, job-creating land so that there's job for us and our kids in the future. The business community was not there with us. And here we have in this document promoting the importance of business lands. We have suffered poorly in the north, and this continues to happen. We seem to be becoming more and more a dormitory suburb of Sydney. We've got these major job employment issues that we've had for over 20 years and we haven't addressed at all, despite previous forums, etc. We still have incredibly high youth unemployment and long-term unemployment. So council needs to become more efficient, take a bit more of a leadership role in dealing with some of these issues so that it's a lot more clear, transparent, and we are focused on jobs, job creation, supporting business and making space available for those businesses to operate.
Thank you.
Well, for the last couple of years, following council being dismissed, one of the organisations that I founded, being Wollongong Against Corruption, did write to David Farmer and to the administrators and had a look at what processes and policies they had changed to prevent corruption from occurring, and I think what they've come up with is quite good and we can be confident in, which is a good sign. But I think these decisions and stopping what happened from happening again, we need to really have a look and put some pressure on the state government to do a thorough review on the ICAC, the Ombudsman, New South Wales Ombudsman's Office, whether it be lack of funding or incompetence. And I think Rod and, Alice and anyone at council at the time in the last 10 years prior to it being dismissed would also say that a lot of complaints went to them. There was a lot happening and there wasn't that support for council to prevent a lot of corruption from happening. So I think the administrators and David Farmer have done a lot that we can have confidence in, and have a look in a couple of years, do a review, what's happening, and then, we really do need the other support on that.
Okay. Rod Oxley, can we hear from you?
I think there are a number of checks and balances that exist in any organisation which is put in place to try and ensure that the things that are supposed to happen do happen. I think it's a falsehood to suggest that in any organisation it's going to be 100% free of any wrongdoing. That's something that is always based around human frailties, and whilst human frailties exist, there are always going to be issues that come about. I think the thing about it is, though, there needs to be enough process put in place, enough systems in place, enough rigour and vigilance to ensure that we don't see those sort of untoward actions occurring that might have occurred not only at Wollongong but other places in the past. So a new council has got in place now a number of checks and balances. The councillors need to ensure that they are able to be made aware of through various reporting mechanisms that those processes are working. At the end of the day, it's the councillors who set the policies, it's the administration that manages them, and that's where we need to ensure that there is that sort of rigour.
Gordon Bradbury.
Going along with what Rod has said, in as much that my understanding of the structure of council under the Local Government Act 1993 makes it very clear that a council or the elected councillors are there to set the strategic and policy directions of the council. You also have to use and function through your general manager, who is responsible for the administration. The trouble is with this council and the previous council that was dismissed is that those lines and boundaries were blurred. Councillors were directly approaching staff and interfering in the processes in council. So if you want integrity and to make sure that we don't go down this path again, those demarcations must be upheld. The disciplines, and that goes for corporate discipline as well as individual discipline, must be upheld. It is also very important to remember that we are trying to instil an image of integrity in the organisation, and that also then spills over to the community. I do agree with Chris, that is, that decision-making needs to be accessible, that one end of the dog needs to know what the other end is doing. I have come across situations, even in recent times, where people have said that they have consulted with somebody in council at one end and got the contradiction at the other. It has to be consistent throughout, and that's the responsibility of the general manager to make sure the structures and the procedures are in place. But let me make it clear, councillors, the mayor, are not responsible for the administration. We are responsible for the policy and strategic directions of this city, and the two have to be kept well apart, and the disciplines must be required on the part of both councillors and staff. And that's the way it will succeed.